We have watched your kind for centuries.
We come in peace, seeking only alliance.
The galaxy was full of stories. Some were myths whispered by children at night. Others were lessons recorded in archives of glass and crystal. But there was one story every starfaring race knew. One story carried across light years in trembling voices. Do not wake the humans. The words were not written on stone tablets, nor sealed in holy books. They were not guarded by soldiers or enforced by fleets. They did not need to be. The rule had been obeyed for longer than history itself. No one remembered when the law was first spoken. No one knew which species had carried it into the first councils of the stars. It was older than governments, older than alliances, older even than many planets' recorded histories. It was a truth carried in fear, respect, and silence. The humans were not extinct. That was the part most outsiders never truly believed, until they saw it with their own eyes. They were not a legend, not a ghost species. They slept. In their cradle world, on the blue planet called Earth, they rested in deep chambers carved into mountains, oceans, and orbiting stations. Some lay in rows that stretched for miles beneath the ground. Others floated in pods suspended in silent orbit above their home world. All of them were waiting, still as statues, untouched by the centuries, and all the galaxy agreed they must remain sleeping. Why? The younger races asked this often, when they first came to hear the tale. The elders would look at them with grave eyes and answer, because the humans burned brighter than any other race. And those who burn bright can also burn everything around them. The archive spoke of an age when humans had spread across the stars. Their ships had not been the largest. Their technology had not been the most advanced. But they had something no one else carried, an endless hunger to explore, to push, to fight, to love, to build, and to destroy. They changed every world they touched, not with slow influence, but with fire and storm. Some records told of their kindness. Humans had healed dying species, lifted civilizations from darkness, and given hope where no hope remained. Other records told of their fury, entire empires broken, tyrants cast down, wars ended not by peace but by overwhelming will. The galaxy remembered both sides. And then, after a time, the humans had vanished. Not one by one, but together. Their colonies were abandoned, their stations empty, their fleets gone. All that remained were the sleeping chambers. At first, the galaxy thought they had died. But the guardians of Earth told another truth. The humans had chosen to rest. They had fought too many battles, carried too much grief. They had given all they could give, and in the end, they wanted peace. So they laid themselves down, not as the defeated, but as dreamers. Thus the rule was written, do not wake them. Do not disturb their dreams. Let humanity sleep, for the galaxy is not ready for their return. Consul Terran had heard this story many times in his life. He had been a child on his homeworld of Ras when the elders first spoke it to him. He had seen the trembling in their hands as they described the humans' power. He had studied the rule in his training to join the Galactic Council, learning the histories, the legends, the warnings. And yet, as he grew older, he began to wonder. Terran was not like the others. Where most consuls took comfort in repeating the old laws, Terran asked questions. Why must they never wake? If they were dangerous, why had the humans not destroyed everything long ago? If they were peaceful, why should they remain trapped in endless sleep? And most importantly, was it fair for an entire people to be denied their chance to live simply because the galaxy was afraid? No one gave him answers. They only told him, the rule is not to be questioned. Years passed. Terran rose higher in the council. He learned more than most beings ever would. He read secret records, viewed ancient transmissions, even spoke with the keepers of Earth, the guardians who still protected the cradle world. Each time he asked why, he received the same response. Because the galaxy cannot survive them awake. But now the galaxy was failing anyway. The great alliances had shattered. Trade between worlds was broken. Hunger grew in places that once flourished. Most of all, the shadow of the Keth dominion spread across the stars. The Keth were relentless, their armies endless, their hunger for conquest unbroken. World after world fell to their grasp. Fleets tried to resist, but none succeeded. Terran had seen the reports. He had watched the maps change color as system after system turned red under Keth control. He had listened to the cries of ambassadors begging for help while the council argued over treaties. The galaxy was falling, and in the back of his mind, The old rule whispered, "Do not wake the humans, but what if? What if the humans were the only chance left? What if the galaxy's fear had blinded them, had chained away the one power that could stand against the Dominion?" For the first time, Terran felt not fear of breaking the rule, but fear of what would happen if he did not. On Ras, in the quiet of his chamber, he studied again the images of Earth. Blue oceans, green continents, swirling clouds, a world alive and waiting. Beneath its surface lay the sleeping ones, untouched for thousands of years. He imagined them waking. He imagined their ships rising again, their voices filling the council chamber, their eyes burning with the fire of old. He imagined them standing against the Keth, not as conquerors, but as protectors. Perhaps the elders were right. Perhaps the humans would rise in fury and bring chaos greater than the Dominion itself. But perhaps, just perhaps, they would rise to save. Terran closed his eyes, torn between duty and hope. He knew what the law demanded. He knew the punishment for breaking it. He knew the weight of history pressing down on him. But he also knew this: if the galaxy fell, then the rule no longer mattered. And so, for the first time in 10,000 years, a consul whispered words forbidden in the halls of power. "I will wake them." The night sky above Ras shimmered with stars. Somewhere among them, far across the void, humanity dreamed, and soon Consul Terran promised himself they would open their eyes. Consul Terran was not a reckless being. He had spent his entire life following the laws of the Galactic Council, even when he disagreed with them. He had risen through discipline, through patience, through careful thought. Yet here he was, standing alone in the silence of his starship, staring at the glowing blue dot on the map that represented Earth. He had made his choice. The journey from Ras to Sol would take weeks, but he felt as if the real journey had already begun. Every hour, every day that passed, the weight of his decision pressed heavier upon him. He was not simply traveling to a world. He was traveling to the heart of a legend, to the place every being in the galaxy had been taught never to touch. The Council had not approved his mission. Of course, they never would have. Terran had disguised his route as a diplomatic journey to the outer colonies. His staff thought he was traveling to review trade disputes. Only his personal aide, a young clerk named Sarah, knew the truth. Even then, she knew only part of it. Sarah had asked him quietly as the ship left Ras orbit, "Consul, why are we really going to the Sol system? There is nothing there but ruins and the forbidden world." Terran had looked at her with tired eyes. He trusted her loyalty, but some truths were too heavy to share. "We are going," he said softly, "because the galaxy has run out of choices." That was all he gave her, and she asked no more. The ship drifted through the lanes of starlight, past ancient stations and forgotten colonies. Terran spent his nights in the observation deck staring into the darkness. He imagined what he would say when he reached Earth. He imagined the silence breaking, the chambers hissing open, the first human eyes opening after 10,000 years of sleep. Would they be angry? Would they be grateful? Would they even understand what had happened to the galaxy while they dreamed? There were no answers. Only the endless hum of the ship's engines and the silence of space. At last, the Sol system appeared. It was smaller than he imagined. A bright sun, yellow and warm, planets circling it in steady orbits, dust and ice forming rings and belts. It was quiet, almost humble, compared to the bustling trade systems of the core worlds. Yet Terran felt a chill as his ship entered the system. This was the cradle of humanity. This was where everything had begun. His crew, unaware of the true purpose of their journey, whispered in nervous tones. Even those who did not believe the old stories could feel the weight of this place. It was as if the stars themselves remembered. Earth came into view. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. It was beautiful, untouched by the scars that marked so many worlds. As the ship descended through the atmosphere, Terran's heart pounded. He had studied records, of course. He knew where the great sleeping chambers were said to rest. The keepers of Earth, descendants of races who had sworn to guard the humans, still maintained small outposts. Their duty was simple: protect the chambers, warn away intruders, and keep the sleepers safe. Terran knew they would not welcome him. The ship landed in a valley surrounded by snow-capped mountains. A river flowed like silver through the land, and carved into the base of the largest mountain, sealed with ancient doors of black metal, lay the entrance, the first chamber of humanity. Terran stepped out of the ship, the air of Earth crisp and cool against his skin. Sarah followed close behind, wide-eyed and silent. The rest of the crew remained aboard, unsettled by the idea of setting foot on the forbidden world. As Terran approached the mountain gate, figures emerged from the shadows. The keepers. They were not human, though their forms were tall and solemn. Their eyes burned with warning as they raised their staffs. The eldest among them stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "Consul of the Council, you have no right to be here." Terran bowed his head in respect, though his heart raced. "I come not as an enemy," he said, "but as one who seeks hope for the galaxy." "There is no hope for you here," the keeper replied. "The humans must not be disturbed. You know the rule." Terran's voice trembled, but he did not stop. "The rule was written to protect the galaxy. But the galaxy is dying. The Keth dominion spreads unchecked. Worlds fall every day. Our fleets cannot hold them. Our people are breaking. If ever there was a time to seek the humans, it is now." The keeper's eyes narrowed. "You risk more than your own life, Consul. You risk the balance of the stars. If you wake them, you may bring not salvation, but ruin." "Or perhaps salvation," Terran said firmly. "Perhaps they are the only ones who can stand against the darkness." For a long moment, silence hung heavy in the valley. The wind stirred the river. The mountain loomed above. At last, the keeper lowered his staff. "If you must walk this path, the choice will not be ours to stop you. But remember this, Consul of Ross. Once the silence is broken, it can never be restored." The great black doors groaned as they opened. Cold air poured out, carrying the scent of ice and stone. Inside, the chamber stretched vast and endless. Rows upon rows of pods lined the walls, glowing faintly with pale light. Within each pod lay a human, silent, unmoving, ageless. Their faces were calm, almost peaceful, as if they truly dreamed. Sarah gasped beside him. "They're real." Terran felt his breath catch. All the stories, all the warnings, all the legends, and here they were, not myths but truth. Thousands of them, sleeping together in silence. He walked slowly down the aisle, his footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. His eyes scanned the pods, searching, though he did not know what he was searching for. At last he stopped before one. The human inside was tall, their features strong and weathered. Even in sleep they carried an air of command, as if the galaxy itself might listen when they spoke. This, Terran thought, is the one. His hands trembled as he touched the control panel. For a moment, fear held him still. If he pressed the sequence, he would break the greatest rule the galaxy had ever known. If he pressed it, there was no turning back. But then he remembered the reports of burning worlds, of children fleeing as the Keth ships descended, of cries that went unanswered because the Council could do nothing. He pressed the sequence, the pod hissed. Frost cracked and fell away. The light shifted from blue to white. The chamber filled with the sound of air rushing where there had been none for millennia. The human's chest rose. Terran's heart stopped. The eyes opened, clear, blue, deep as oceans long forgotten. They blinked once slowly, then fixed upon him. The silence of 10,000 years was broken, and the human spoke. "Why have you woken me?" The chamber was filled with silence again, but it was no longer the silence of sleep. It was the silence of something ancient awakening, of a legend stepping back into reality. The human inside the pod slowly sat upright. Frost clung to their skin and hair, melting into rivulets of water that dripped onto the floor. Their chest rose and fell, each breath deep, deliberate, as though relearning the rhythm of life itself. Their eyes, blue as a twilight sky, studied everything with careful calm. Terran could hardly breathe. For years he had imagined this moment. For weeks he had traveled in secret to make it possible. Yet standing there with those eyes upon him, he felt smaller than he had ever felt in his life. The human's voice came again, low and steady. "Why have you woken me?" The words were in a language older than the Council itself, but Terran's translator implant carried them faithfully into his mind. Still, he felt the power behind them in a way no device could ever capture. Terran lowered his head, his voice trembling. "Because the galaxy is breaking. Because we are losing. Because there is no hope left." The human tilted their head slightly, as though listening not only to Terran's words but to the silence between them. "You speak of war," the human said at last. "You speak of fear. How long have we slept?" 10,000 years, Terran whispered. "Perhaps longer." The human closed their eyes for a moment, and in that pause the weight of those years seemed to fill the chamber. When they opened again, their gaze sharpened. Then the galaxy should have learned peace. Sarah, standing behind Terran, took a cautious step forward. Her voice was gentle, almost pleading. Peace was tried. But now there is war. The Keth dominion spreads across the stars. Worlds burn and fleets fall. We cannot stop them. The Council cannot agree on anything. Our people are afraid. The human's gaze shifted to her, and she shivered as though the very air grew colder. And so, the human said slowly, you disturb us from our rest because you think we will save you. Neither Terran nor Sarah answered at first. What words could carry the truth of their desperation? What words could convince a being who had chosen silence for 10,000 years to rise again? Terran forced himself to meet the human's eyes. Yes, he said finally, because no one else can. The human studied him for a long time. Then slowly they swung their legs over the edge of the pod and stood. The sound of their bare feet touching the cold floor was louder in Terran's ears than thunder. The air seemed to thrum with their presence, as if the very stones of the chamber recognized them. They walked a few paces, looking at the rows upon rows of sleeping humans still sealed in their pods. Their hand brushed lightly against the glass of one, a woman's face peaceful in slumber. We dreamed for peace, the human murmured, almost to themselves. We chose to sleep so the galaxy would not have to fear our hands again. They turned back to Terran, and now their voice carried not only sorrow but also steel. Do you know what you risk by waking us? Do you know what price may come? Terran's throat tightened. I know the stories. I know the warnings. But I also know this. If nothing is done, there will be no galaxy left to protect. The Keth will consume everything, every world, every people. There will be nothing but silence. The humans stepped closer. Their gaze seemed to pierce through him, searching for weakness, for lies. Whatever they saw, they found truth enough, for at last they spoke again. Then the dream must end. Those words struck Terran like lightning. He had expected anger. He had expected refusal. He had even expected death. But not this. Not agreement. You will help us? He asked, almost not daring to believe. The human's lips curved, though it was not quite a smile. Help, perhaps. But you must understand, we are not saviors. We are not gods. We are human. And humanity does not walk lightly. They raised a hand and pressed it against the control panel of the nearest pod. Lights flickered. Codes ran across the display. The pod hissed and frost began to melt. Terran's eyes widened. Wait, you mean to wake them all? The human did not turn to look at him. Do you think one voice can turn the tide of a war? Humanity does not rise alone. We rise together. Sarah gasped as the second pod opened. A woman stepped out, her hair dark and her eyes sharp, scanning the chamber in silence. She did not speak to Terran or Sarah. Instead, she looked to the first human, and in that shared gaze something unspoken passed between them. Understanding, unity, memory of a world far older than anyone alive could imagine. One by one, more pods began to glow, their systems awakening. The chamber filled with the sounds of hissing seals, cracking frost, and the first breaths of those who had been absent from the galaxy for millennia. Terran felt both awe and dread. The air grew heavy with presence, with power. These were not legends now. These were not stories. These were living beings, returning. The first human turned back to him, their eyes bright with a light that seemed to come from within. You have broken the silence, they said. You have woken the dreamers. There is no turning back now. The keepers stood at the doorway, watching with grim expressions. One of them stepped forward, his staff trembling in his hand. You do not understand what you have unleashed, he warned Terran. Once awakened, humanity will not rest again. The galaxy will change whether it wishes to or not. Terran bowed his head. Then let it change. For if it does not, there will be nothing left to change at all. The keeper shook his head, but he said no more. Perhaps even he saw the truth in Terran's words. The humans gathered, dozens now awake, their eyes adjusting to the chamber's glow. They spoke quietly among themselves, their voices carrying strength but also weariness. They asked questions of one another. How long had it been? What world they stood upon? What fate awaited them beyond the mountain? The first human raised a hand, and silence fell. We slept to dream of peace, they said, but the dream has ended. The galaxy calls again. We cannot refuse it. The others bowed their heads, not in obedience, but in agreement. It was clear to Terran then, humanity was not ruled by one voice or one leader. They moved together, as if bound by something deeper than law. As the chamber filled with more and more light from awakening pods, Terran felt his knees weaken. He had done it. He had broken the greatest rule of the galaxy. He had woken the humans, and yet even in his fear he felt a strange sense of hope. The human placed a hand on his shoulder, their touch firm but not unkind. "You will guide us," they said. "You will tell us of this Keth Dominion. You will tell us of the Council, of the broken alliances, of the worlds that suffer. We will listen. We will decide." Terran bowed his head, tears stinging his eyes. "Yes, I will tell you everything," the human nodded once. Then humanity has awakened. Outside, the winds of Earth swept across the valley. The mountains stood as they had for ages, but something in the air had shifted. The silence of 10,000 years was gone. In its place, the first breath of humanity echoed once more. The chamber was no longer silent. Rows of pods hissed and cracked open, one after another, until the air was filled with the sound of awakening. Men and women stepped out, their faces pale from the long sleep, their bodies covered in frost. Some staggered, steadying themselves on the smooth walls. Others stood tall immediately, their eyes sharp and alert as though no time had passed at all. Consul Terran could only watch in awe. He had imagined the moment of one human awakening, but never this. Now dozens filled the chamber. Their voices rose in low tones, speaking to each other, asking questions, remembering, piecing together the reality of the present. The first human, the one Terran had woken, stood at the center, their posture calm but firm. All eyes seemed to turn toward them without need of command. They were not a king or ruler, but the weight of their presence was enough to draw silence when they raised their hand. "You have slept for 10,000 years, Terran said, his voice shaking but steady enough to be heard. "The galaxy has changed. Alliances have fallen, fleets are weak, and a shadow grows across the stars. The Keth Dominion conquers system after system. Soon, nothing will remain." Murmurs spread among the newly awakened humans. Their voices carried both sorrow and anger, as if they could already feel the weight of the suffering Terran described. One woman, tall and strong, stepped forward. Her eyes were dark and her words cut through the chamber. "We slept because our hands had caused too much fire. We laid ourselves down so the galaxy might heal. And yet it seems the galaxy has not healed at all." Terran bowed his head. "It is true. Without you, we failed to protect what was given. Without you, the stars grew weak. I know the rule. I know the fear, but I had no choice." The woman studied him for a long moment, then turned to the first human. "So what now? Do we return to sleep, or do we rise?" The first human walked among the rows of pods, their hand trailing lightly across the glass. Faces looked back at them. Faces of friends, of comrades, of dreamers who had chosen rest so long ago. Their voice was soft, but it carried through every corner of the chamber. "We dreamed of peace," they said. "But peace cannot exist while children cry in the dark. Peace cannot exist while tyrants rule unchallenged. Perhaps we wish to escape the burden of our nature, but we cannot escape what we are." They turned back to Terran, their eyes bright with both sorrow and fire. "You say the galaxy needs us, very well. Then let the galaxy see humanity once more." The keepers shifted uneasily at the chamber's entrance. One of them stepped forward, his face grave. "You break a silence older than memory," he warned. "The balance of the stars was held together by their absence. If they rise again, nothing will remain the same. Do you understand the weight of what you ask, Consul?" Terran lifted his head. His voice was quiet but filled with conviction. "I understand. And still, I would choose this path, because to do nothing is to watch the galaxy die." The keeper closed his eyes, then slowly bowed his head. "Then so be it. The choice is made. The burden is yours." The humans began to move. Some searched the chamber for their kin, waking others with steady hands. Some spoke in low tones, recalling old memories, orienting themselves in this strange new time. Others tested their strength, flexing arms and legs that had not moved for ages. But even in these small acts, there was power. Terran watched as one human touched the wall, and the very lights of the chamber seemed to respond. Another examined a data panel and within moments understood its systems more deeply than most engineers he had known. They were not gods, but they were something different. Something sharper, quicker, stronger. For the first time in his life, Terran felt not just hope but certainty. If anyone could stand against the Keth Dominion, It was them, yet the humans themselves carried doubts. What if we bring only fire? One asked. What if we are no better than the tyrants? Another murmured. We chose to sleep, a third said bitterly. Perhaps we should have stayed in our dream. The first human silenced them with a steady gaze. We dream to escape our pain. But the galaxy does not dream with us. The galaxy bleeds. If we can bring even one light into that darkness, then we must. The others bowed their heads, slowly accepting. Humanity had always argued, always doubted, always questioned. But when the moment came, they moved together. That night, if it could be called night in the timeless chambers beneath the mountain, Terran spoke with the first human alone. They sat near the edge of the chamber, where the hum of the pods was quiet and the air was cool. Sarah sat nearby, listening but silent. You must tell me, the human said, their voice calm but firm. What kind of enemy do we face? What is this dominion? Terran swallowed, remembering all the reports, the cries, the flames. The Keth Dominion is a force that spreads like a storm. They do not seek alliance, only conquest. Their fleets are vast, their armies endless. They take planets, strip them, and move on. Those who resist are destroyed. Those who submit are chained. They do not stop. The human's eyes narrowed. And the Council? What of them? They argue, Terran admitted. They send fleets, yes, but divided ones. They do not unite. They do not act quickly enough. Every day more systems fall. The human was silent for a long time, then spoke softly. The galaxy has not changed. Only the names of its tyrants. Terran's chest tightened. Will you help us then? Will you lead your people once more? The human looked at him, and for the first time their voice carried not only weight but sadness. You must understand. To wake us is not to summon heroes. It is to summon humanity. We will fight, yes, if fight we must. But we will also question. We will also make mistakes. We are not saviors, Consul. We are only human. Terran met their gaze, his voice steady despite the tremor in his chest. And that is enough. The following days were filled with preparation. More chambers were opened. More humans awoke. The mountain valley that had once been silent now hummed with activity. Fires were lit for warmth. Words of old languages echoed in the air. The humans built quickly. They repaired old machines stored in the vaults, revived ancient tools, tested weapons that had not been touched in millennia. Their knowledge returned swiftly, as though sleep had not dimmed it but preserved it. Terran walked among them, both amazed and fearful. He saw a child no older than Sarah's age learning from 3 awakened scholars, absorbing lessons faster than seemed possible. He saw a group of soldiers sparring in the snow outside, their movements precise and fluid like flowing rivers. He realized then why the galaxy had feared them. Humanity did not rise slowly. Humanity rose like a storm, but storms carried weight. One night, Terran stood at the mouth of the valley, looking at the stars. The first human came to stand beside him, their breath misting in the cold air. You carry a heavy burden, they said quietly. Terran turned to them. It is not mine alone. It is yours now too. The human's eyes reflected the starlight, distant and yet piercing. We did not ask to be woken, yet we are awake, and so the burden is ours. They looked toward the sky where the stars shimmered like endless eyes. Tell me, Consul, do you truly believe we will save you? Terran hesitated, then spoke with the truth that had carried him this far. I do not know, but I believe you will try, and that is more than anyone else can give. The humans said nothing more, but their silence held something, acceptance perhaps, or the quiet fire of resolve. And so the humans prepared. The dream was over. The silence was broken. The weight of awakening pressed upon them all, heavier than any law, heavier than any council, heavier even than the rule that had kept them sleeping for so long. The galaxy had called them back, and humanity had answered. The valley no longer belonged to silence. Where once only wind and rivers had spoken, now voices filled the air. The sound of tools striking metal echoed against the mountains. Sparks danced as machines were rebuilt. Fires burned bright in the snow as newly awakened humans gathered in circles, speaking, planning, remembering. Consul Terran stood among them, his heart heavy with both fear and awe. He had seen many civilizations. He had walked the great halls of the Council, spoken with rulers and kings. But never had he felt a presence like this. Humanity was not simply awake. They were rising. Ships long buried beneath the mountains were unearthed. Hulls scarred by age were polished, circuits rewired, engines coaxed back to life. These vessels had once carried humanity across the stars, and now, under the touch of their creators, they came alive again. Terran watched as a group of engineers, men and women whose hands had not touched a machine in 10,000 years, worked with a speed and confidence that left him breathless. They argued, yes, but their arguments led to solutions. They debated fiercely, then laughed, then built together. They do not work like us, Sarah whispered beside him. They burn. Terran nodded slowly. Yes, that is why the galaxy feared them. But he also thought that is why the galaxy needs them. The first human, the one Terran had woken, moved among their people not as a ruler, but as a guide. They spoke little, but when they did, all listened. Their words were not grand speeches, but steady truths. We rise not for conquest, they reminded their people. We rise not for glory. We rise because the galaxy bleeds and we cannot dream while it suffers. The humans nodded, their eyes alight. They did not cheer wildly, for they were not a people of empty noise. They prepared. They focused, and they remembered. The keepers watched from the valley's edge, silent guardians uncertain of their duty now. One of them, an elder with silver hair and a lined face, approached Terran quietly. You have done what none before dared, the keeper said. You have broken the greatest rule. Do you not fear what comes? Terran met the elder's eyes. His voice trembled, but his resolve did not. I fear everything. But I fear the Keth more. If humanity brings fire, at least it will be a fire that fights for life, not against it. The keeper studied him for a long time, then sighed. Perhaps it was always meant to be this way. The dream could not last forever. When the first ship rose into the air, the valley shook with its power. Snow fell from the peaks as engines roared to life. The vessel climbed higher, leaving a trail of light against the evening sky. More followed. One by one, ships that had slept as long as their crews ascended. Their hulls gleamed under the sun, reborn from the rust of ages. They did not look like the fleets of the Consul, ornate and slow, but like predators of the void, sleek and sharp, designed for both survival and speed. The humans gathered beneath, their faces lit by fire and light. For the first time in 10,000 years, humanity's fleets touched the sky. But the weight of awakening was not only on ships and steel. It pressed upon every human heart. One evening, as the stars shone above the valley, the first human sat with Terran near the river. The air was cold, but the sound of water was steady, calming. Do you regret it? The human asked softly. Terran turned his gaze upward. Regret what? Waking us. Terran was silent for a long moment. Then he shook his head. No. Even if this ends in fire, even if the galaxy fears you again, I would not undo it. Because at least now, we have a chance. The humans studied him, their expression unreadable. At last they said, You are braver than you think, Consul. But you must understand our return will not be gentle. Some will welcome us. Others will fear us. And some will fight us. Are you ready for that? Terran's hands trembled slightly, but his voice was firm. Yes, I chose this. I will stand beside you no matter what follows. The human's eyes softened, and for a brief moment Terran thought he saw something unexpected. Gratitude. News spread quickly, faster than light. Whisper networks carried it first, then traitors, then frightened ambassadors. The humans were awake. In council halls across the galaxy, panic broke. Some demanded the fleets be sent to Sol to stop them before they grew too strong. Others begged for alliance, desperate for salvation. Old arguments rose, old fears returned. But the Keth Dominion heard too. Their leaders snarled at the news, their fleets adjusting course. They remembered the stories of humanity's fire. They did not want humanity awake. They wanted them crushed before they could rise again. And so, as the first human fleets left Earth's orbit, a shadow of Keth warships already moved toward the Sol system. The humans knew. Scouts had spotted the enemy approach. The first humans stood before their gathered people, their voice ringing clear. The Keth come for us. They wish to end us before we begin. We will not wait for them to strike. We will meet them. Not because we seek battle, but because battle has come to us. The humans did not cheer. They nodded, calm and resolute. They had chosen. Terran sat aboard one of the rising ships as the human fleet prepared. He had never seen such order. Soldiers strapped into armor with quiet determination. Engineers checked systems with quick hands. Pilots studied maps with sharp eyes. He realized then, it was not that humans lacked fear. It was that they carried fear and moved anyway. The first human stepped onto the command deck, their eyes fixed on the stars where the enemy approached. "This is not only our fight," they said. "This is the fight of the galaxy. But we will show them first what it means when humanity wakes." The ship's engines roared. The fleet surged forward, leaving Earth behind, not abandoned but no longer silent. When the Keth fleet appeared, dark and endless, Terran's heart sank. Their ship stretched across the void like a storm cloud, massive and unyielding. The Council fleets had always fallen before such numbers, but the humans did not falter. "Form wings," the first human ordered calmly. "Strike swift. Strike hard. Do not let the shadow consume you." And then the fire began. Human ships moved like nothing Terran had ever seen. They darted and weaved, striking with precision. Their weapons sang, beams of light tearing through the dark. The Keth answered with overwhelming force, but humanity did not break. They adapted, they learned, they countered. One ship fell, then another, but for every human vessel lost, 3 Keith burned. Terran clutched the rail as the ship shook with impact, yet even in fear, he felt something stir within him, hope. The galaxy had feared humanity's fire, and now he saw why. It was not simply destruction. It was will. It was defiance. It was the refusal to surrender, even when the stars themselves seemed against them. Hours passed. The battle raged. And then at last the Keth fleet broke. They retreated, their dark ships scattering into the void. Humanity had risen and the storm had bent before them. The humans did not celebrate wildly. They stood together in silence, their eyes heavy, their breath steady. They had won, but they knew this was only the first battle. The Dominion would return stronger than before, but the galaxy now knew. Humanity was awake. As the fleet turned back toward Earth, Terran stood beside the first human on the command deck. "You saved us," he whispered. The humans shook their head. "We saved no one yet. We only showed the galaxy that humanity still breathes. The real war begins now." Terran looked at them, his heart full. "Then we will fight it together." The human's gaze swept across the stars. Their voice was quiet, but it carried like thunder. "Then let the galaxy remember. Humanity has returned. The dream was over." The silence was gone, and the fire of humanity burned once more.